Let's go to the Director of Public Affairs at the Zionist Federation of Australia, Dr. Bren Carlile. Dr. Bren, thanks so much for your time. We heard there from James Patterson. He's really worried that something really serious is going to happen in this country. Do you share those concerns?
Yes, I certainly hope that. Of course, it doesn't, but yeah, I think it's possible that something would happen. But I think let's not focus on the. Let's not focus on the possibility that will happen. I think when we, the police, everyone needs to put in place actions and policies to make sure it doesn't happen. And the police have. They've increased their presence in Jewish areas in Melbourne and Sydney and things like that. But it's one of those sort of be alert but not alarmed things.
Yeah, sure. Let's get to Penny Wong's comments on the weekend. She's called for Israel to make steps towards a ceasefire. Now, I don't want to equivocate over language and what she did and didn't mean, but it's important to note here that she didn't call for a ceasefire. Penny Wong is certainly alive to the idea that a ceasefire would benefit Hamas.
Yes, she didn't call for a ceasefire. We quoted her statements that she called to take steps towards a ceasefire in our statement. The problem is envisioning a ceasefire when Hamas retains power in Gaza. When you boil down to it, either allowing Hamas or wanting a situation where Hamas retains power in Gaza means accepting that massacres like what happened on the 7th of October will happen again. Because Hamas, it wasn't just a terrorist attack, it was a highly sophisticated combined arms attack in which they first disabled a local army base and then moved to civilian areas to carry out the massacre. So Hamas has said that it wants to do that again. If it retains power, it will have the capability of doing that again. And that's why Hamas needs to be removed. So talks of a ceasefire or talks of taking steps towards a ceasefire, which she clearly said needs to be on both sides, actually indicates that there is a view there that Hamas will retain power. And I think that's an intolerable threat. And I might add that...
A view that Hamas would retain power, I don't think there's any acceptance of that. I mean, how many times does government have to say that they want to see Hamas defeated? That's also the stated aim of the US. US fully supports Israel defeating Hamas. I don't actually know what that looks like. We also had Blinken in the West Bank just a week ago saying the Palestinian Authority, he'd like to see then the Palestinian Authority fill that void in Gaza.
Yeah, well, look, the government has been clear, on October 8, when the world's leaders, including Australia's leaders, stood in solidarity with Israel and agreed that Israel's right and obligation is to remove Hamas from power. That was fantastic. And the government hasn't officially changed that line, which is fantastic because it's right, Hamas does need to be removed from power. But talking about taking steps towards a ceasefire when Hamas is still in power leads people to the conclusion, even if it's the wrong conclusion, it can lead people to the conclusion that the government is calling for a ceasefire while Hamas is still in power, which is bad. And I might add, there was a ceasefire, and Hamas ended that ceasefire on the 7th of October.
Okay, so what do you want to hear now from the Australian government?
I want to hear from the Australian government clear, unambiguous support for Israel's right and obligation to remove Hamas from power. Now, everyone should be horrified by the impact on this war on civilians in Gaza. I am horrified. And I know members of the Australian Jewish community are horrified. Okay, but that horror and that outrage needs to be directed at the party legally and morally responsible for the impact of civilians, which is Hamas. And
Penny Wong says Israel needs to be held to a higher standard here. What do you think of that?
Well, the laws of armed conflict hold all combatants to the same standard. But Israel, look, Penny Wong has not said or hinted that Hamas does not break the laws of armed conflict, and which is great because they don't, right? But unfortunately, some of her statements, she's actually never said that Israel is breaking the laws of armed conflict, but some of her statements, again, might accidentally lead people to believing that she says that Israel is. I don't believe that Israel has broken any laws of armed conflict in its operation in Gaza, and I think those sorts of statements should be made clear by government spokespeople.